So at the outset, I'd like to thank Dr. Sudeep Gupta and Dr. Hemant Malhotra for giving me this opportunity to talk on BRCA testing in hereditary breast and ovarian cancer syndrome, and especially talk about the Indian scenario. This topic is fairly close to my heart because I'm a breast oncologist, and this was my thesis as a postgraduate student, and now that I'm pursuing my PhD in cancer genetics, it's more so very relevant. So, without wasting time, I have no conflicts of interest to declare. However, I would like to acknowledge that all the patient data that I'll be showing through these slides belongs to and has been generated by Professor Rajiv Sareen, as Dr. Malhotra rightly pointed out. And it also is work of the Cancer Genetics Clinic and the lab, with chief contribution by Dr. Pradnya Kautal and Mr. Ravindra Reddy. Uh, Going on to the topic directly, who should be offered genetic testing? So as such, if genetic testing was not resource intensive, or it was not so expensive, or if it did not have any adverse impact on the psychosocial or the long-term functioning of that individual, then it would have just been easy to order it like a complete blood test. So you would have done it just like a CBC. However, we know that it is not that simple. It is resource intensive, extremely expensive, and it has implication. And hence, we have to select our patients. So we select patients who have higher likelihood of inherited predisposition to cancer. And traditionally, the cutoff that has been used is 10% of probability. However, that there is really no consensus. It could be 15%. It could be even 3% for some populations. It just depends on the risk perceived by the patient and by the physician. So also, there is no point of testing when there is no therapeutic or preventive option for that patient. So we go ahead with genetic testing where there are these options available. And by this cutoff criteria, nearly 10% of all cancer patients across all breast and ovarian cancers diagnosed would be eligible for counseling and testing. There are several mathematical models that have been built on thousands of patient data that tell us what the inherited predisposition would be and give us the risk prediction scores. However, the accuracy and validity of these models that were built on the Western patient data have to be closely monitored and evaluated in the Indian patient setting. And this was done again by the Sareen Sir's team. 521 HBOC cases were tested, who were tested for full BRCA1-2 sequencing along with MLPA whenever required, and pitted against the Bodesia and BRCA-Pro model scores. And here it was seen that those patients that had lower risk score or lower probability of testing positive for germline mutation ended up having germline mutation positive in our Indian setup. And you can see almost a very, very large number of patients were observed when very small numbers were expected. That means here you can see that 47 patients tested positive out of 182, whereas only 6 were expected to test positive based on the BRCA Bodesia score. And similarly, here you can see in the BRCA-Pro scoring as well, where only 4 were expected, nearly 62 out of 212 patients tested positive. And here you can see the odds ratio totally lopsided, and which just shows that even though these models predict that the patient does not have a very high risk of testing positive for any germline mutation, if there is syndromic diagnosis, and for a experienced genetic counselor, if that counselor feels that no, needs to be tested, it may be more beneficial. And these mathematical models will have to be tweaked for the Indian scenario, or new models will have to be made so that we have more accurate data or more validated data for us to bank on. It also shows that there is a need for better guidelines in the Indian scenario. Coming to the criteria for testing, currently the There are several guidelines and several testing criteria. However, I'd stick to NCCN and our own TMH criteria. Here I've just compared and contrasted for better understanding. The NCCN criteria are mostly built along the Western data where they have where all the models are built on. And it says that there is significant family history. If there's significant family history, you would select these patients for testing. And the same thing is there for our patient populations also. For most of the Western world, the breast cancer patients are screen detected and usually older than 60 years of age. And hence they have said that patients who are younger, so according to them, 50 years or younger, should be tested. However, for those who treat breast cancers know that in India, the median age of breast cancer patient is around 50 to 55. And by the NCCN criteria, nearly half our breast cancer patients would have to undergo counseling and testing, which becomes totally unwieldy and may not actually end up showing the results that we really seek. And that therefore the cutoff was arbitrarily reduced by 10 years to 40 years in our patient population. That means patients younger than 40 would be undergoing counseling and testing. Similarly, for TNBCs, where NCCN says younger than 60 years need to be tested, for our Indian population, we've kept a cutoff of 50 years. All ovarian cancers are recommended to undergo genetic counseling and testing, whereas in our scenario, if the patient does not have any family history of breast cancer, the lady has to be younger than 60 years to undergo genetic counseling or testing. There are several other criteria like bilateral breast cancer. If a patient previously had breast and then ovary, or ovary and then breast, then those undergo counseling and testing, or those with CA pancreas or family history of prostate cancer. Male breast cancer, and these are also reflected very well in the NCCN guidelines. Now, with those guidelines, this is what the growth of the cancer genetic services in Tata Hospital look like. Nearly 1,500 new families register every year now, and you can see the exponential rise in the demand of genetic services at Tata Hospital. And daily, the clinic sees nearly 5 new families and 10 follow-ups of the already registered patients or the healthy carriers. With this, and here we have almost gathered nearly 10,000 registrations on new families. And of these, nearly 9,000 families, we could make some or the other cancer predisposition syndrome. And you can see over here, most of these are hereditary breast and ovarian cancer syndromes. And this is merely a reflection of how the data is even worldwide. So HBOC, or hereditary breast and ovarian cancer syndrome, leads the germline mutation scenario far ahead compared to any other syndrome, even more so with the Lynch or Lee-Fromeni syndrome. And you can see that the clinic caters to not just the HBOC, but malignancies that can affect someone from head to toe. These patients, not just the proband, but also the family members are counseled and encouraged for undergoing mutation testing. And here, this is the data shown for nearly 1,800 individuals in 1,100 families. And what is interesting to note that it literally follows the Mendelian rule, where nearly half of the family members, as you can see over here in pink, tests positive for the mutation, whereas the other half tests negative. And I always remember when Dr. Sareen shows this slide, he always emphasizes that it is not the mutation carriers that are diagnosed benefit largely from the testing, but it is the mutation negative relatives. That means a lot of these relatives that test, or family members that test negative, are finally relieved that they do not possess the deleterious mutation and can lead a normal life. So we also analyzed nearly 304 patients who tested positive for BRCA to look at what the phenotypic presentation was in these patients. And just like we spoke earlier, nearly majority or nearly half of them had unilateral breast cancer diagnosis, but a big chunk of them also had ovarian cancer. Some had breast plus ovary, whereas some has had bilateral breast cancers also. If you further go into detail of the IHCs, BRCA1 is known to cause triple negative breast cancers, and as expected, nearly 85% of those who tested positive for BRCA and for whom we had receptor status known, they had triple negative breast cancer. So it does follow sort of the common standard that is seen worldwide and is not very different. Now, this is just a snapshot of trying to show what is the actual demand or what is the actual need of genetic testing in India. So in India, annually, it's predicted by Dr. Sareen that nearly 1 lakh cases may need BRCA testing. And I'm not talking about any other cancer, but just BRCA testing and counseling, even if the testing criteria is more stringent than NCCN. And he has come to this number as follows. So if we say that if we keep a stringent criteria and don't say that all ovarian cancers need testing, then at least 50% of all the ovarian cancers would require counseling and testing. That's 22,000. If we say that only about 20% of all our breast cancer patients will require testing and counseling, mind you, just the latest census that we took, or just latest audit we made of our breast cancer patients at the Tata Memorial Hospital showed that nearly 25% of all our breast cancer patients are younger than 40 years of age. So I'm still taking a very, very conservative estimate because this was just an age cutoff, and yet I'm taking only 20%. So that brings us to 42,000. Now, if we take, so that brings us to a total of 64,000 patients. If we take only 1/3 of these 64,000 patients, then they are going to test positive for BRCA1 or 2 mutation. That means 21,000 patients or 21,000 families will have to be then screened. 1/5 of them, that means 1/5 of the 64,000 will get VUS in the NGS panel, and that we know is because of the rarity of testing in the Indian scenario. But luckily, the testing VUS rate has come down to about 15 to 20%, but it's still fairly high for that particular individual. Now, if we go and look at the number of family members that may have to be tested, nearly 40,000 relatives of them will have to undergo genetic counseling and testing. And by the Mendelian rule, out of these 40,000, 20,000 will be likely carriers. So if you see the overall load of the testing and genetic counseling that is required, so even if this is typical of Dr. Sareen, and this is entirely his slide. So he says that even if by some magic, mainstreaming of genetic testing happens for most sporadic cancers or breast or ovarian cancers, still a detailed pre and post test genetic counseling is going to be required for 75,000 individuals. Because they might have strong family history, confirmed BRCA status, or VUS, or no identified mutation, but a strong family history. And this just brings us to the fact that the need is tremendous, and we don't know how we need to move forward. What happens if we don't screen these patients or don't screen the family members? This is what our own Indian data is, and not taken from any Western literature. This just shows for BRCA1 185 del AG what is the penetrance, and here you can see that by the age of 55, the chance of having developed a breast cancer is as high as 75%, and moving forward it goes up to nearly 85%. What about ovarian cancer? So by the age of 60, nearly 45% of these patients would have had ovarian cancer, and as you know, that ovarian cancer is not as yielding or as giving as the breast cancer, and is fairly dangerous. What is the state of genetic testing? We just spoke about the need, but are we ready? Do we know? Do we have the armamentarium? So in our country, the onus of medical decision making completely relies on the physician. Only if the physician orders, the genetic testing is done. And it's greatly influenced by the understanding of genetics by that physician and attitudes towards genetics. The awareness of patient is barely there in terms of genetic testing, and with time, when more and more targetable mutations are found, the demand will surpass the supply. And hence it's important to involve physicians in genetic testing and counseling for their seamless integration into care pathways. And this is precisely what mainstreaming is all about. This is a very important and seminal paper that shows what mainstreaming can do. And here you can see that the traditional BRCA testing pathway in UK initially for all ovarian cancers was once the cancer was detected, the patient would be discussed in a meeting and then referred. Once referred for genetic counseling, the patient will be counseled, then testing will be done, and then once results are done, then care will be personalized to the BRCA status. And you see over here, the patient loses nearly 20 weeks in receiving the appropriate therapy. And this happens because there is a long waiting period for genetic counseling and testing because of the sheer numbers of patients that require it and the dearth of counselors and testing facilities. What happens when there is mainstreaming of BRCA testing? That means the care physician or the oncologist who diagnoses and who tells the patient about or informs the patient about the diagnosis themselves are enabled to order BRCA testing after detailed counseling of that particular patient. And once the test is ordered, as usual, it takes around 4 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks for the test results to come in. And you can see over here that the care could be personalized according to the BRCA status in just about 4 to 6 weeks rather than 20 weeks. And for any oncologist who's here sitting knows the difference or knows the impact of the delay of these 16 weeks on the patient's outcome. So to test whether our systems are ready for mainstreaming, we wanted to do a KAP survey, that's the Knowledge, Attitude and Practice Survey among the oncologists for genetic counseling and testing to recognize gaps in specific areas and provide means of designing strategies to mitigate. Here I will not go too much into detail. This survey was sent out to several oncologists throughout the country, and the typical type of questions were asked about several genetic syndromes. We will focus only on breast and ovarian over here, but I'd just like you to focus on the type of questions we had asked. The first question usually was asked was dash to dash percentage of breast cancer patients may benefit from genetic testing. That means the lower bound and the upper bound interval was asked. And the other question was that other than strong family history, what were the other pathological or clinical features that may prompt them to consider for genetic counseling and testing? That means one had to recognize features of breast cancer other than family history for them to refer that patient to genetic services. And the same type of question was asked for ovarian as well. To know the attitudes and practices, we asked several other questions, and we also asked very, very pertinent and important question, practical oriented question as to what were the 4 most important causes why patients who may benefit from testing or counseling were not referred by them. And also, if they felt that there were knowledge gaps, how they could change their knowledge gaps or practice. And the one last question we added later and asked to them was about mainstreaming. So it was a direct question asking them whether they would like to participate if they were taught how to do a pre-test counseling or a simple post-test counseling, would they be interested in participating in mainstreaming? And this was pilot tested in some 75 participants or oncologists, and then subsequently was emailed throughout the country to several oncologists, and nearly 231 responses were there. So here you can see that most of the responses came from teaching hospitals, and the median years of experience was fair enough. It was nearly 8.5 years. Here you can see that most of them replied nearly 10 to 20% of breast and ovarian cancer patients would require genetic testing or counseling, which is not incorrect. However, here you can see the other clinical features in breast cancers where nearly 36% participants could not identify young age as the criteria. 60% could not identify triple negative breast cancer, and nearly the same number could not identify association with ovarian cancer for breast cancer patients, and nearly 85% did not answer about male breast cancer. Similarly, when we also asked about ovarian cancer, nearly 50% could not identify young age, 60% could not identify association with breast cancer, And a staggering 82% could not identify high-grade serous histology as one of the important pathological factors which could link or which could prompt genetic counseling and testing in patients with ovarian cancer. So we further went ahead and we had asked, what if the patient has a strong family history? How many percentage would need genetic counseling and genetic testing? And it was surprising and fairly shocking to know that even with a strong family history, they felt that only 52 to 72% will require genetic counseling, and a lower percentage would require testing, that is 42 or 44 to 62 percentage. So it just shows that even in patients with strong family history, testing or counseling was not considered in 100% of these patients. When we asked about reasons for not referring, these were the most important results, as we knew that what we should base our further actions on when we want to spread awareness or we want to go down the mainstreaming pathway. So they said that yes, we were not aware. We had lack of physician awareness, lack of patient awareness. Cost was one of the important criteria. Lack of clear guidelines, and today we have the launch of Indian guidelines, and I'm extremely glad because that was one of the top 4 responses given by oncologists who felt that there was lack of clarity in guidelines, and they were clouded usually by the several Western guidelines that were probably not applicable to Indian scenario. And turnaround time for any treating oncologist waiting for a test for another 4 weeks might be fairly difficult, especially if it is an advanced cancer. We asked what were the suggested methods for improving the knowledge and practice, and that they came back with that you should incorporate it in training. So not just during postgraduate training, but maybe introduce cancer genetics or genetics per se at MBBS level, improve the availability of these services, conduct more workshops and CMEs or didactic lectures to inform oncologists and teach them about the importance and importance of the genetics facilities. So in summary, genetic counseling and testing demands will rise. Thousands of families suffer due to lack of physician awareness and financial constraints. The current infrastructure that we have is incapable of handling all the demand that is going to come in future. Mainstreaming may be the right way to go, and it has to be implemented in stepwise and planned manner. There are several challenges in practical implementations of the knowledge which needs to be addressed before attempting mainstreaming. We have to help generate Indian data by pooling of data for better prediction so that our VUS rates go down from 15% to probably 10% and 5%. Then strengthening overall infrastructure. So it's not just about testing and counseling or just repeated counseling with the geneticists, but it is also overall infrastructure, because all of these patients and their family members who are carriers will have to undergo screening. And it's a lifelong screening. So are we capable of handling that kind of load? And we have to improve social awareness so that there is reduced stigma and patients who are carriers also live without fear. Thank you.